Hello and welcome. Record temperatures in Russia have also turned up the political heat for the country's strongman Vladimir Putin. The Prime Minister is facing growing public anger over what people there are seeing as a failure by the government to act in the wake of a heatwave and toxic smog that has claimed hundreds of lives daily. Mr. Putin's firefighting effort from the cockpit of an aircraft dropping water bombs on the blaze was denounced by his critics as a publicity stunt more geared towards getting him re-elected as president in 2012. He also received criticism for changing forestry codes while president, which may have contributed to the scale of the disaster. Mr. Putin's dependency on Russia's significant oil revenues has also taken a hit, leaving him with less financial flexibility at a time of severe economic downturn. And critics are also wary that he's trying to consolidate his position by boosting the powers of the Russian security services in the face of growing public protests on the streets. So today we ask, have Russia's widespread forest fires started to burn the careers of Vladimir Putin and his allies? Join our conversation with your questions and comments. Send an SMS or an email, and we'll also take your phone calls on the show. With me to examine the political impact of the natural disaster in Russia is Boris Volodarsky, an independent intelligence analyst and former Soviet military intelligence officer. He's the author of the KGB's Poison Factory, From Lenin to Litvinenko, and the Orlov KGB file, the most successful espionage deception of all time. Dr. Volodarsky joins us from Vienna. And in Moscow we have Maria Lipman, editor-in-chief of Pro et Contra, a journal published by the Carnegie Moscow Center. Ms. Lipman has had an extensive career as a journalist covering Russian politics for both Eastern and Western publications. I welcome you both to the show. And Dr. Volodarsky, I'd like to start with you, sir, if I may, and talk about the 11 years of Russia that have been under Vladimir Putin's control. Of course, he seems to have faced some of his biggest challenges this summer with the heat waves that have taken so many lives and the forest fires that have ravaged the countryside, food crops, and of course created that toxic smog. To what degree do you think he's going to suffer any kind of political fallout from these disasters?
I don't really think he's going to suffer any fallout because of these disasters, though there is, of course, a blow to the Russian government and to Mr. Putin in particular, as well as to the President Medvedev. The level of support of both personalities, and specifically of the national leader, who Mr. Putin is rather high in the Russian society. So I don't really think there's any challenge at all to his power, and he's most likely to come to the presidential chair again in the year 2012.
Maria Lipman, I'd like to bring you in here and actually put a couple of emails to you directly, if I may, we got from viewers touching on this issue of leadership, so I can get your perspective. A couple of them back to back. The first one is from South Africa, from Abdikad, who wrote in saying, Russia is facing major economic problems and the raging fires question the ability of Putin's leadership. And the second one from Ethiopia says, and is from Gedeon Georgios, who says, Putin's leadership will not come to an end. While Russia needs a strong authoritarian leader to save it from its current downward spiral, there will be a time when the country needs democracy. Now, I wonder what impact do you think these current challenges the Prime Minister is facing will have on his future political career? And does Russia need someone strong like him to keep it on track through these tough times?
Well, to begin with, I will totally agree with Boris Volodarsky. The leadership in Russia, either we're talking about Prime Minister Putin or President Medvedev, is not seriously challenged by these fires. Indeed, the approval ratings for both leaders have been around 70 to 80%, and these numbers have been pretty stable, at least over the past year and a half, 2 years, in spite of quite a few of crises and disasters that hit Russia, including, for instance, two suicide bombings of the Moscow metro earlier this year. People really believe that maybe the country is not in great shape, maybe there are serious problems, but it is important to have somebody in charge. People do not have very high expectations, and most of all, they accept the status quo. They do not want political change. They, I think, commonly believe that political change can only make their lives worse, not better. Talking about all the criticism that you listed early in the show, indeed, there are lots of critics, but these critics express their criticism in non-government media with much smaller audiences than national television that is focused on the performance of both leaders, but first and foremost Prime Minister Putin in charge, meeting with the victims, reassuring them, promising government relief, and President Medvedev giving orders and dressing down officials who underperformed.
Okay, well, on this issue of media, Dr. Wolodarski, let me get an email from South Africa to you, if I may, sir, from Daike Moru, who wrote in saying, as the fires reach the forest outside Chernobyl, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster site, there are rumors that the government is engaged in a cover-up. Is the government hiding the extent of the fire's danger? I wonder what's your assessment on how well the government, the authorities have kept the public aware of what's going on, and how much that's, if they have done a good job, how much that's helped to keep the public in check? Because it seems we're seeing people out on the streets worried about what's going on.
I believe that the government, as it was during the Soviet time, is applying to a bright extent of the disinformation campaign as usual, and trying to hide as much as they can from public, not saying all what is happening really. There's great danger, and there was raised questions about fires coming to the area of the Chernobyl, where there's still a lot of radiation in the forest, and this radiation can be raised in the form of clouds, and that can be very dangerous even to Moscow itself. There were reports about a very high toll of death in Moscow, actually 1.5 to 2 times higher than usual because of the smokes and fog and whatnot. And this, of course, being slightly misinterpreted by the government, or they're doing their best to conceal the truth as much as they can. Whatever comes out, but whatever they can conceal, they do.
Maria Lipman, a new Levada Center poll has showed that President Putin's popularity rating, his poll rating, is still high. It's a more than 50% approval rating, but Russians do seem unhappy to a large degree with some of the issues they're facing. For example, his handling of corruption, the country's out-of-control billionaires and disparity between the have and have-nots, and the high level of crime. How likely do you think that public discontent is going to show itself at the presidential election in 2012? Do you think it will have any mark on the potential for Vladimir Putin to be re-elected as president? And do you think perhaps it might actually show in popularity voting ratings as well?
Well, people indeed may be unhappy about many things, and if you look at particular policies, you do see discontent. If you ask people, are you indeed happy or unhappy about the crime rate, about corruption, about the economic situation, you will find more people unhappy than happy. However, Putin's approval ratings, and actually they are around 80%. It depends very much. There are different numbers if you talk about trust, if you talk about support, if you talk about approval. Now the approval gets the highest, and it's indeed around 80%. In a situation with no political competition, as the case in point is in Russia, the accountability issue does not exist, and people do not regard themselves as a force, as we the people who can hold the government accountable. In fact, if you look at the polls, over 80% of the people respond in polls that nothing depends on us. And in a way, they accept the situation in which they are not responsible. They eagerly surrender responsibility, leaving the decision making with the government, and then not holding the government, the topmost people in the government, responsible for the not very good situation in the country. So when it comes to presidential election, whoever is running, it may be current Prime Minister Putin, or it may be President Medvedev, I do not think that they will face any problem. The election is scheduled for 2012. Rumors have it that should things deteriorate somewhat, should the issue of public support be a source of concern for the Kremlin, the election can be called early, so that the authorities will get the desired result anyway.
Okay.
One more important thing, people may be not very happy with the developments, but they do not see any alternative. And some 34% of the people in Russia in a very recent poll say that actually the reason for Putin's popularity is that there is no alternative.
Okay, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later in the show as well, but Dr. Wolodarski, if I could put an email to you we got from a viewer in the UK, from Alex, who wrote in saying,
Right.
Putin has been a disaster for Russia, but try telling that to any Russian. It should come as no surprise that a former KGB operative is connected to the contract killings of Litvinenko and Politikovskaya. Now, I wonder, sir, to what degree do you think that there is, I mean, that an 80% rating, approval rating, as Maria Lipman has described it, is phenomenally high for any leader, really, especially after 11 years in office or 11 years in power. I wonder to what degree Russians are either in denial about what they have in terms of choice or the quality of their leadership, or these are just simply massaged kind of figures.
If you see the discussion forums that are being run nowadays, especially in connection with the recent death of in London of Alexander Litvinenko or the shooting in Moscow of Anna Politkovskaya, you shall see that the majority of those who express themselves in the votes are supporting the policy. They're thinking that the strong government and the strong man at the head of the government, and we talk about, of course, Mr. Putin and not Mr. Medvedev, they are supporting him, and they think that this is the right thing to do, and that the strong government is something what is needed for Russia. They see him as their strong leader. They still remember Stalin as a strong leader, and they think that Putin is doing right well, and whatever happens to those assassinations, actions against dissidents, of those who are arrange meetings in Moscow, protests in Moscow, especially on the 31st day of the month. This is tragedy 31, it is known in Russia. To suppress them is the right thing to do. To suppress those who protest against the Himki forest cutting is also the right thing to do. So they're supporting their leaders exactly because of those activities. And Putin, when he is sanctioning assassinations abroad and actions that would be extraordinary and would ruin any government, he is gaining support of his citizens rather than their opposition. First thing. And the second thing, we should not forget that there are no real elections in Russia. In fact, it doesn't really matter what the electorate thinks. Either Putin or Medvedev, upon their decision, they decide who among them should run for the next president, he will definitely win. There's no doubt about it.
We have to take a short break now. When we return, if Vladimir Putin and his allies end up as political casualties, who's standing in line to replace them? We'll be right back. Welcome back. Russia's politicians are feeling the heat not just because of record temperatures there, but because of broad public anger at the rising death toll and weak government response to widespread forest fires that have left a toxic smog over the Moscow region. Discussing the implications this has on the careers of people such as Prime Minister Vladimir Putin is Dr. Boris Volodarsky, a former Soviet military intelligence officer who now works as an independent intelligence analyst, and writer and journalist Maria Lipman, who serves as the editor-in-chief of Pro et Contra, a journal published by the Carnegie Moscow Center. And Dr. Volodarsky, if I just get back to you with a thought on something that Maria Lipman had said, the idea that there's no one really standing in line to take over, and you yourself said that, you know, the election as such is almost predetermined, that it's going to be either Vladimir Putin or Dmitry Medvedev. Now, what would it take for the situation to get so bad in Russia that the public would demand a change in leadership?
It's hard to say really what's gonna. Probably the situation that Mr. Gorbachev was facing in the years 85, 86, 87, when he had to call, in spite of his unwillingness to call for a perestroika and glasnost, that is for major changes in the country, a very difficult economic situation, political situation which we don't think is going to happen, very strong opposition leader like it was Mr. Yeltsin, who became the president, who might face who might become a serious contender to Putin and Medvedev. But this is not going to happen because they're having all completely under their control. And during his 8 years of power and now 2 years of President Medvedev, they concentrated all power in their hands. Everything is controlled. The KGB officers, former KGB officers, are occupying all important posts in economy and industry, in politics, in government, in local government. So I don't really see there's any chance at all until a new, very strong opposition leader appears to talk even about any possible changes.
Right. Now, Maria Lipman, the human rights groups have been alarmed by a law passed by President Medvedev last month to give new sweeping powers to the FSB, Russia's intelligence service. Now, give us an idea of what the implications of that are and you know, the potential risks that it might entail for rights.
I would not call it new sweeping power. In fact, FSB has plenty of power, and one should remember Russia is not a law-governed state. It's not that FSB acts according to the law and would stop short of any operation because it doesn't have legal authority to do so. Anybody who would suggest that would be made fun of in Russia. This is an agency that enjoys full accountability, even more than other agencies in the country. Now, the new amendments indeed sound rather bizarre because they allow FSB to hold people responsible not even for committing crimes, but for what is put as creating conditions conducive to committing crimes. The wording is rather vague. It is not clear what conducive to committing crimes can entail. And an important reservation should be made here because, because these new amendments have been indeed passed, does not mean that there will be an immediate change of policy. I would look at this as one more intimidation tool. The government of today, quite unlike the Soviet government, is not prone to large-scale violence, is not prone to actually jailing people for what they think, what they write, what they publish. Actually, the situation in Russia is infinitely freer today than it was in the Soviet days. If we talk about individual freedoms, political freedoms may be strongly constrained, civil liberties may be a problem, but individually people are totally free compared to the Soviet days. This explains why even harsh critics actually do not feel the urge to act. Life indeed in Russia is better today than it ever was, even with the slowly deteriorating living standards.
Okay.
Compared to the days of Yeltsin, compared to the last days of the Soviet Empire, living standards have gone up and people appreciate it.
Let me ask Dr. Volodarsky, then what's your take on the FSB laws? Of course, Vladimir Putin is believed to be largely behind the changes. What do you, with your experience, of course, with the intelligence agencies and the industry, what's your take on what's happened in terms of the change and how it might affect Russia?
That will not strongly affect Russia, but we do not need to. We must not forget that the FSB is not the intelligence service; it's the security service of Russia. When we talk about the intelligence service and like dealing with those illegals who were caught in America previously, we should talk about the SVR, the Service of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. So FSB is the security service. So all measures that support their activities, or legal measures that support legal activities, they are directed at the security of Russia. But with the new amendments to the current FSB law, we should, as we do in London now, talk about the thought crime. And this is what is quite new in this situation, that the FSB can now punish people, or at least can accuse them of committing a thought crime. That is something that people are only thinking about, not doing physically, not organizing, not being engaged in. And this, I believe, is dangerous because that will very quickly lead to the same situation as we had with the with the Soviet dissidents during the Soviet time. And I would probably not agree quite with Masha saying that Russian people are living very much in freedom, or in more freedoms as it was in the Soviet Union. It's different in Moscow, like in other areas of Russia, and it's different in different locations. It's not exactly the right thing. Probably the people in Moscow are living better than they lived during the Soviet times, but people in the far end of the country are living much worse, I believe.
Now, Dr. Volodarsky, you mentioned the spies there, the roundup there was of 10 spies that were in the US. Now, you maintain those agents weren't sort of bumbling spies as was often portrayed in the media, and I wonder, why you believe they were more of a network of undercover agents very central to Russia's current intelligence service.
Russian intelligence service, the SVR, and previously the first chief department of the KGB, they always had illegals, because the illegals are an important part of the tradecraft. We do not need, when there are discussions about the role of illegals, specifically those who were caught in the United States, everybody is forgetting that the role of illegals, or sleepers as they were called in the media, is not to collect intelligence. They have entirely different functions. Their function primarily is to point to persons who might be recruited by the intelligence service, or to approach the candidates and to serve as in the professional lingo, it's called cutouts, links between Russian intelligence operators and the already recruited sources of information in the American government or in any country's government, within the military, within intelligence, counterintelligence services, where it is impossible to maintain contact between a source, a mole, and the Russian intelligence officer who is normally operating from the legal positions from the Russian embassy or another official mission. So the role of illegals is not to collect intelligence, is not to spy. They're helping, they're technical helpers, they're helping the intelligence officers that are based in the country to deal with those who may provide important and valuable intelligence. So they were completely all right and they were true.
Right. Well, Maria Lipman, I wondered, Vladimir Putin said he met with the deported agents singing patriotic songs and telling them that their future would be bright in Russia. What do you expect will happen to them? What do you expect their fate to be?
Russia started
sorry,
from denying
Dr. Volodyarsky.
any Russian involvement.
Apologies, sir. I was just going to quickly ask Maria Lipman that one.
Okay, sorry.
Well, it's really hard to say. It should be remembered that actually that meeting between however you call them, spies, agents, moles, whatever, and Mr. Putin was private. It was only reported what he did with them, that sang songs, congratulated them on their performance or whatever. I do not think that they will lead prominent lives. I don't think we will hear a lot about them or hear it all in the near future.
All right.
I think this is an unfortunate operation. I think they failed, and it was a disgrace for the Russian intelligence, and I do not think they will actually be popular figures in Russia.
Let me ask Dr. Volodyarsky one quick thought here, and it's an email that we got, and I'm going to ask for a quick answer in a minute. It's from Canada, from Rashid Chowdhury in Montreal, who says, as long as the state controls Russia's oil and natural gas, Putin has virtually unlimited funds to buy off the electorate. If the price of oil falls dramatically, it's a completely different scenario. Just a quick thought, so with 30 seconds to go, do you think that any dramatic economic change could change Russia's political scene?
It probably will not change, it will not be the major factor, but will be definitely one of the most important ones. We remember that during the Brezhnev times and in the early Gorbachev times, the prices of oil indeed dropped very much, and that influenced significantly the situation of Russia and inside Russia. I think, yes, indeed, if the price of oil drops dramatically, say to $25 or low to the barrel, that will probably cause a lot of problems in Russia.
Well, Dr. Volodyarsky, Maria Lipman, I thank you both. So many questions, never enough time. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thanks for joining us too. Remember, you can follow the show on Facebook, where we post upcoming topics and recent programs. Share your questions and comments. We'll pose them to our guests. On the next show, a tough past and tense future. What progress have Afghan women made since the Taliban ruled the country? And how will the departure of US troops affect their rights? Tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.